So we've all been watching the smartphone industry evolve over the last few years, but the future is far more interesting than the past. So in this video we're going to talk about the top 5 trends upcoming in smartphones, things that either we really think are going to happen or things that we would really like to see. The first thing is bezel-less displays. Now 2017, as you've probably noticed, has been a great year for smartphones and their screen-to-body ratios. Screens have gotten much larger, and still at the same time, bodies of the phones smaller. Now it is very unlikely that at least for the foreseeable future, we're not going to see any phones with a 100% screen-to-body ratio, because of course there are things on the front of the phone like the front camera that people don't really want to be parted from. However, screen-to-body ratios are going up and up, comparing 2017 flagships to 2016 flagships in terms of how much of the front of the phone the screen takes up, and the average percentage has gone up by about 5%, which is gigantic when you think about it. And currently the market leader, the Essential phone, in terms of screen-to-body ratio, has already hit just under 85%. Bear in mind you may have elsewhere seen a higher figure being advertised, but if you have, then that is nothing more than a marketing gimmick. In terms of actual measured screen space on the front of the phone, the Essential phone is the leader. But the point here stands that it will not be long, either in 2018 or 2019, we are very likely to see a smartphone with a 90% screen-to-body ratio. And as we head closer towards this direction, it's incredibly exciting because it means we can get not only this futuristic aesthetic, but also a smartphone that is incredibly practical. There is no wasted space on the front of the phone. You don't have to be an expert in smartphones to know that one of the main problems people have with them are the lithium-ion batteries inside. They are incredibly bulky, they don't hold their charge for often longer than a day, and they also take a long time to charge. Companies are very much aware of this though, and whilst it has been a very long time coming, any sort of replacement to lithium-ion or lithium polymer batteries, there are some on the horizon. We've got solid-state batteries, we've got fuel cells, but perhaps the most promising is graphene, which could correct most of the battery woes we have with our smartphones right now, but also shave 2mm off the thickness of your phone. And there is one company who is leading the way with this, a company known as Graphene Nano. Now they're developing batteries for cars, and using this graphene technology, they've managed to build a battery that could sustain a car over 500 miles. Using that same technology in a smartphone, and you could be looking at a transformative level of battery life, not to mention less weight and faster charging times. In the meantime, as this technology matures though, we could see something else quite interesting when it comes to wireless charging. A technology which, as it stands, hasn't really reached its peak. It's a little bit fiddly and it's a little bit slow, but we're starting to see in some public areas like coffee shops, people can walk in, take their coffee and sit down at their tables with their laptop and phones out. And the company, for example Starbucks or for example Costa, will have installed wireless charging pads under the tables. So whilst you're simply just doing your work, typing up your office documents, your laptop can be charging, your phone can be charging, just by sitting there, no cables, no faff, you don't even need to think about it. And this seems very likely to become a trend across many public spaces. The next one is instant biometric access. Now, smartphones have been on a bit of a journey when it comes to authentication methods. Originally we had the password, which, yes, was fairly secure, but at the same time was really cumbersome. When the smartphones really started to come to the fore, we had the 4-number PIN and we had the pattern on Android devices. And these are far simpler input methods, but at the same time they do lose a bit when it comes to security. Enter fingerprint scanners. These were first introduced into a smartphone in 2007, believe it or not, by Toshiba, but they weren't popularized until the iPhone 5S in 2013. And now, as we sit here in late 2017, it's almost criminal if a flagship phone doesn't have one. And fingerprints are great, they're far easier to enter even than a PIN or a pattern. And they're even more secure. But the next generation is really the face or the iris scanner. The reason for that is it requires even less human effort. And we've started to see this in phones like the Galaxy Note phones and the iPhone X. When it comes to biometric access on a phone, there are 2 things which are causing a delay. The first one is you needing to take an action, for example needing to move your fingerprint to the fingerprint scanner and hold it there, and the second one is the smartphone needing to process that fingerprint. Now, the second one, the smartphone processing capabilities, they're just going to get better and better every year, so that time is going to go further and further down. The only way to improve the first section though, is to reduce the time it takes you to take that action. And that's exactly what we saw when you moved from a fingerprint scanner to a face scanner. Instead of fiddling around your finger to find the socket, all you need to do now is lift your phone a little bit. And from this we can start to see where the future is. Any authentication method that requires even less time than the current Face ID or iris scanners we see is a progression. And so hopefully in a couple of years' time, we'll have it so that you won't even need to lift your phone up. You'll simply need to be present somewhere in the phone's field of view. The phone could be able to constantly track you with the front camera, and as scary as it sounds, it could be very useful. For example, your device could always be knowing that you're the one who's using it, and therefore you'd never need to authenticate anything, you'd never need to enter a password, and you'd also never need to enter your credit card information. Everything would just be done automatically. Number 4, flexible displays. And whilst we've seen these being talked about ever since 2011, we are still fairly far from a post-production model. Even the Samsung Galaxy X, which should be releasing in 2018 or 2019, or the ZTE Axon M, which literally just released, these aren't flexible phones, these are more just foldable phones. When we truly get flexible smartphones, imagine the possibilities. You could be using your smartphone just as normal in a standard form factor, and when you're done, you could just fold it up into half the size. Or for example, you could wrap it around your wrist and use it as people are currently using their smartwatches. You could also drop it and pretty much nothing would happen to it because these displays are made out of a plastic. You could be traveling around with a phone that has a tablet-sized display. It could have a 7.5 and 8-inch display, which then folds up to have a form factor that is no larger than a current 4-inch screen phone. The next trend is essentially a replacement for the conventional virtual keyboards. Here's the thing. Humans have very powerful brains that work at many times the pace that their limbs can keep up with. Have you ever felt when you're having a conversation with someone over Facebook Messenger or Twitter that you just can't be bothered to keep typing? Because your brain is thinking things at 1,000 times the speed that you're typing them, and it feels like a bottleneck. It feels like you're being slowed down by your fingers, and therefore you'd rather just call someone. So because naturally people are quite a lot faster at talking than they are typing, this is the next logical step. Being able to control your phone entirely through your voice. Although of course our brains are still thinking far faster than even our mouth can keep up with, it's definitely a step in the right direction. So in order to be able to better understand what you're saying, future smartphones need to improve not only their audio detection hardware, but also their software. In terms of the hardware, what I'm saying is that these flagship phones need to come with high quality, omnidirectional microphones scattered around the phone. By having this, the smartphone at least has a better chance of being able to reduce background noise and actually hear what you're saying. As it stands, a lot of phones, they come with one tiny little microphone pocketed away in the phone's bottom corner. And from this, yes, the phone has an idea of what you're saying, but how can it possibly understand the pitch, the tone, the expression in your voice if it can barely pick up your voice? So the first step is having that good hardware so the phone can hear you. But the phone needs to not only hear that voice, but to also have the software to understand it. So on that front, we need to see developments in AI, artificial intelligence. Now, obviously this is going to help other aspects of the phone as well, like the voice assistant, like the camera. But one of the key areas it could also help in is being able to understand what you're saying. In some years' time, your smartphone should be able to understand the intricacies of human tone and therefore translate your voice into written text that actually reflects the mood it was said in. As it stands, voice recognition is just getting good enough to differentiate between different people's voices. So for example, you can now set up a voice lock on your phone so that if I talk, the phone knows it's me and unlocks, but that's still a very basic form of the technology and AI needs to just get better. But it's on the way, as you may know with the Huawei Mate 10 that's just been released. That is the first phone that has a dedicated chip just to process AI tasks, and I'm willing to bet it won't be the last one. Anyway guys, I really hope you enjoyed this video and you found it interesting, and if you did, it would mean so much to me if you could smash that subscribe button. I'm Mr. Who's the Boss, and I'm signing out.